Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Boxing, Weights and Rugby YouTube channel. I'm with my good friend Enda today, and Luke will be joining us at some indiscriminate point in the near future to discuss the wonderful week in boxing that was Spence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. and Inoue versus Stephen Fulton Jr. We're also going to briefly touch on a couple of the other fights that have been, and not really look forward to the month of August.
That's
How
not
are you, my friend?
that's not fair. I think, August is generally a holiday month anyway, but there is one fight that's caught my eye, and I think a lot of people will be. It'll be a very exciting fight. And
Is
I
that the
think
one that got cancelled?
What?
Is that the one that got cancelled?
No, still going ahead.
What's caught your eye?
Mr. Navarrete.
Oh yes, I totally forgot. I've actually got the list down here in front of me. And
Yeah, but I mean, like,
is,
even when I was looking at the list, that's the one that I'd picked out.
It was the Navarrete fight. It's a very good fight, to be fair.
You know what I mean? It's just because it's not domestic to us, so it's it's not, because obviously it'll be a middle of the night job, but it's on Top Rank. So guess what?
It's on Sky. Yes, which is good. So, anyway, we're going to get started now. We're very briefly going to touch on Lee McGregor first.
Yeah.
And then we're going to give Luke a maximum amount of time to get back in so that we can discuss everything else, largely so that we can rub the Inoue result in his nose. And it would be cruel to not let him discuss Crawford at this point. So a bit of give and take. But, so, obviously, it was the last Friday, so not the Friday before. Lee McGregor came back from an incredibly long time out of the ring, like a full year, I think it was, at super bantamweight this time against Robles from Mexico.
Yep.
And lost, I thought, was a fair unanimous decision, split decision.
Yeah, it was unanimous.
In an absolute belter of a fight.
It was brilliant. It was excellent. It was really good. Who says Channel 5 don't do good fights, apart from the one on before it, which we won't talk about?
It's Wasserman, isn't it? It's the Wasserman stuff that is more of the issue. But for the Lee McGregor fight, I think it's an interesting one because I don't think anyone who watched the Lee McGregor fight is going to have any issues watching Lee again, despite the fact he lost.
No, not at all. I mean, it's at that level now where entertaining fighters are worth a lot more than protected fighters, you know?
Yeah. And Lee's a really entertaining fight. He was very unlucky in his last fight to get the draw. I thought the draw was not fair. I thought he won it, but I thought he lost that fight. I had a 7 rounds to 5, so 115, 113 to Robles, and it was one of those fights where you're screaming at the TV. You're like, so for me, every time Lee McGregor threw the jab right hand, so just the simple straight punches down the line and then moved, he was winning it reasonably comfortably, and for an inexplicable reason, he would tuck up tight and he would let Robles fire away those really entertaining combinations to head and body and just let him go bang, 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 bang. And then he would do the same one, which is he would throw the right uppercut and come back with the left hook to the body, which Lee loves as a combination. And it was just one of those ones where I was like, you can see how he wins that fight in a rematch. You can see how he gets better. I hope he learns from it, and shit happens in boxing, doesn't it?
But it was, as you said, like, I mean, for, kind of a neutral, me, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I mean, and I thought the decision was correct, but again, giving McGregor his flowers, as we say now, I thought he performed admirably well. And it's great. And I agree with Boxing Learner here 100%. It was a bloody great week for boxing.
So yes, we'll quickly wrap up with Lee McGregor and then get on to the good stuff. But I think Lee comes back, goes another fight, you get the rematch with it, and I think as long as he develops, he'll get there. He will get there, and I've got a lot of faith in how good he is. But shall we get into it?
Yeah, if you want.
So 1 week ago today, in Tokyo, Japan, Inoue challenged Stephen Fulton Jr. for the WBC and WBO Super Bantamweight Championship of the World in Inoue's back garden. Fulton traveling out to the States in what was, we thought, a fight where Inoue was the favourite, but it was going to be a test to see how he was going to acclimatise to the new weight. It was going to be a test to see, is his punching power going to cake up? Could he take it against a slick American fighter, which is not necessarily what I think Fulton is, but that's a separate discussion that we'll get into. and he was absolutely unbelievable.
He
And
really was.
And come Tuesday evening, now we were all sat going, "What? Like, how is anyone going to beat him for pound?" And what do we know? Well, what do we know, guys? But we've obviously all seen the fight. What did you think? What do you think of Inoue? What do you think of Fulton?
Okay, well, I love Inoue, and seeing that fight, I just thought, well, he has to be number one pound for pound for everybody, and he was.
Yeah, for 3 days.
For 5 days.
Yeah,
4 days. 4 days.
4 days. 4 days in the middle.
So, I mean, he was just brilliant. I mean, I know he was at home, and all credit to Fulton for going to Japan. He was the champion, but he still went to Japan, and I mean, Inoue just put on an absolute masterclass, and you know his destructive power was there for all to see. And obviously, the higher he goes in the weights, the bigger the power he has in those punches. And he really, I mean, his uppercuts and his overhands were just so destructive. I was bowled over by him. I think everybody was, because Tuesday evening, Twitter or X or whatever it's called was full of admiration for the Japanese wonder kid that is Inoue. And so it was kind of like proved what I knew in my head. So I was very happy. You know, everyone likes it when they're proved right.
Yes.
But fair play to Stephen Fulton afterwards for being very magnanimous in defeat, and he's behaved admirably ever since. And I mean, this shouldn't be the end for Fulton at all. I mean, he's coming up against a pound for pound great, and there's plenty left for Fulton, you know. But definitely, I'd like to see Inoue, you know, get the unification fight now to become undisputed. And again, I think they're earmarking, is it November, December for that?
I think so, for against the Palace.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Filipino.
That would be a great, obviously, you know. And speaking of Filipinos, the great Filipino, Manny Pacquiao was full of admiration and praise for Inoue, and for later on for Terence Crawford, because he was at the Crawford fight.
He was.
For those in attendance, actually, it was a great on the pay-per-view I was watching on. I watched the whole thing because I couldn't sleep, and they were just calling out everyone was there, and it was really a who's who of boxing. Never mind the celebrities, but yeah, no, I was absolutely, you know, as good as I thought Inoue was. I thought that was just a phenomenal performance, and yeah. So, what did you think, Adam?
So, I've kind of got, like, when you're looking at fights and predicting fights, as we all like to tend to do, I try and follow set rules so that you don't let your heart run away with your head. Now, Enda is Inoue's #1 fan, and I'm probably like 1B. Like, we both absolutely adore Inoue and have for years. What happened was a very, very good world champion fought against one of the all-time best fighter, the best fighter out of Japan, one of the best fighters ever out of Asia. Inoue is unbelievable, and the things he does, and the fact that he's gone up 5 weight classes now without losing his speed, without losing head, without having he's put on a stone, and he's as fast and explosive as ever. And he's actually, that was the best I've seen him, because against Donaire, who, that's the kind of fighter you've got to be. Like, Donaire's a 4-weight Hall of Famer, and he gave it everything to live with Inoue. Inoue was a little stiff and a little upright in terms of you could come over his jab with the right hand. Fulton landed 2 right hands that really mattered to me in the fight. And that was in the 7th, when he was basically, that was his, like, right, fuck it, let's go. Yeah, the last hurrah. But Inoue did so well. It was the explosive jabs. It was the up jab. It was the fact that he never let Fulton set his feet properly, because he was just about in range, and he kept Fulton engaged, and he kept him in his stance, and then he was in and out, and he was gone. And Fulton was like, oh, and all Fulton could really get out was this kind of one jab. Whereas Inoue's was so explosive, and suddenly he was rattling off these brilliant combinations. And we said a minute ago about Lee McGregor. He loves a right uppercut and left to the body, and so does Inoue, but it's never just that. Like, he was able to, he's now got the catch jab, he's now got the kind of pull and counter, he's got the counter straight over to the jab, and he just kept hitting Fulton. And You know, maybe if Inoue was at, say, Superfly, the Fulton goes out like that. But all the size did for Fulton just meant that he got an extra 3 or 4 rounds of beating for me. I didn't give Fulton anything. I know a lot of people gave Fulton, I think it was the 7th, for doing better.
I had genuinely, I had that a clean sweep for Inoue, and the judges actually were a little bit kinder to Fulton, but no,
it's grading on a curve.
But then I was kind of like, you know, was I kind of, you know, a bit blinded by favoritism or whatever? But no, there seemed to be a general consensus that there was very little you could give to Fulton in that fight.
Yeah, I had a clean sweep as well, and it was.
With that being said, Fulton didn't disgrace himself.
No, so this is the thing. It's not like Fulton went in there. We were like, oh, he didn't even try. He did. He was game. He threw his jab. He tries to throw his punches. They tried to pressure Inoue when they could. But, and we're going to talk about feet again, Inoue's base is amazing. He's so fast in and out. And he's so fundamentally sound. Because when he gets into position to throw, the base is underneath him. So when he throws his combinations, and he does throw beautiful combinations, it's not like at the end of the combination he's falling over and then you can counter him there. And Inoue's punching technique's so tight. The shots are so short and fast. Fulton was too scared to punch with him because he was like, that's when you get him. You get him, say, when he's throwing the jab or committing, because he jumps in. But Fulton was so scared because he goes, right, what's going to happen here is if I try and time him with, say, a right hand over the jab, which was the one he was going for, I'm getting a hook. If I miss this, he's chinning me with a hook. And what happened was he then couldn't. Fulton very slowly had options taken away from him, and he started to panic. And you could see in the 7th, he was like, "We're just going to have to go for it. 'Cause that's what we've got." And you know, he's doing this to unify the best super bantamweight in the world. You know, he beat Danny Roman, he beat Figueroa. It was phenomenal. It was the way he went to head and body. That stab jab to the stomach was the best one I've seen since Floyd. It was absolutely phenomenal. And he just broke him down. And you see it in, I think it's the 2nd or 3rd round, where he stabs to the stomach and just gets the distance ever so slightly wrong. So he catches him like halfway through the punch rather than at the end of the punch. And that was the shot he finished him with. And he hits him with the right hand that he's too tired to see coming. And then he doesn't go down because he's totally out of it. And then the left hook puts him down, a bit like Willem Smith did with a Coley as he kind of leaps in. And it was just... It was absolutely unbelievable, and he was by a million miles the best fighter in the world for 4 days. It was honestly, it was brilliant. Like we both adore Inoue, and he's fantastic. And I know that we slightly disagree on one of the other fighters, but I now think there's 3 kings in boxing today. There's 3 special fighters that stand head and shoulders above everybody else, and Inoue is one of those 3.
So who's the 3rd?
Usyk.
Who's the 2nd?
Crawford.
So
not in that order. Those are the 3 people, I think.
So are you saying Canelo is not special?
Not now in the way he was. So Crawford would have been 4 years ago, not the Crawford today. So because we're going to have this discussion slightly later on, which is I'm talking about in terms of the best fighters in the world today.
Right now, yeah.
Right now, it's a different conversation to what...
You said, so you mean Canelo?
No, so right now,
yes.
3 best fighters in the world.
No, but you said Crawford was better before, not today, when you meant Canelo was better before, not today.
Yes, sorry. So I mean, Usyk...
I do that as well. I say one name and I mean the other one in my head.
The other. Yeah, so Crawford, Inoue, Usyk.
That top 3. I can't disagree with that. And it's funny because everyone said name your top 5, and you're kind of like, well, I'll put Bivol in there, but Bivol hasn't done anything since, and then Bivol only beat a blown up Canelo. So
the middleweight. But that's who you've got to beat.
But he was fighter of the year last year, you know.
But Canelo was pound for pound number 1 at the time when Bivol beat him. So you get these kind of arguments there, and I understand all of it. But certainly for Inoue, what he's done is he's won titles at light fly, super fly, undisputed at bantamweight. You know, the WBSS. He's a Hall of Famer. And this fight here rubber stamped his status as an all-time great fighter, as did the other fight this week. It was absolutely brilliant, and the knockout, particularly the fact he was just like, right, go, and then you just see Fulton slumped in the corner.
Absolutely.
It was just breathtaking. But Tapales
Yeah.
is the fight to make next. It has to be.
But speaking of that app, there's so much annoying things that people say on that app that got wrong regarding. They said Inoue hit him when he was down. He didn't.
Nope.
He was never called down. He got back on his feet, so he wasn't on the canvas when he was hit. He
never
rose
touched
back
down.
up. There was no, box to the, instruction of the referee, and he could perfectly do what he did. If I was Fulton, I'd have stayed down when I was down and took that, standing count, or took the 8 count and then perhaps got back up. But that's just after timing. Everyone's an expert after the fact. But this notion that Inoue hit him when he was down, and then someone else said, well, he should have got a 5-minute rest because he was hit illegally. And I'm like, what rule is that? Like, people make up rules in their heads.
That's the low blow rule, isn't it?
No, but it's not 5 minutes. I've never seen anyone get 5 full minutes for a low blow.
Yeah, I think that was the rule, but no one takes it. No one takes 5 minutes, and then they know that the other rule is if they don't. So right, for those who don't know, Enda's a judge, right? You're a judge.
Yeah, amateur level, but you're still, there's the connection on there to professional boxing.
Absolutely, but so to my understanding, the rule is after a severe low blow, the rule is 5 minutes, but it wasn't a low blow. This is so that's a totally irrelevant thing. It's 5 minutes after the low blow, as far as I'm aware. If you do not continue after 5 minutes, it's a stoppage. That is my understanding of that rule.
But then you go to the scorecards, unless it was a deliberate low blow, and then you're into disqualification territory. But that's a very muddy waters kind of place, because as we all know, it's so difficult to prove intent.
Indeed. Yes, but we'll definitely get away from that one.
Nope. Sorry, I was only speaking about low blows and nothing else.
It's nonsense anyway, because it wasn't like it was a close fight and Inoue punched him in the balls. That's not what happened.
It's this grasping at straws by people, and you're like, oh,
everyone's got.
And then, but I have learned a lesson. I don't get involved anymore with these idiots on Twitter. I just let it pass, let it go, and somebody else can explain why that person is not well. I think they're just, a lot of them are just wind-up merchants. They're saying something controversial to get a reaction.
To get a reaction,
yeah.
Someone said to me, or I saw it in a film or something like that, it was like, arguing with an idiot is like playing chess with a pigeon. It doesn't matter how well you play the game of chess. At the end of it, it's going to jump up on the board, knock all the pieces off, and shit all over the place anyway. Exactly.
And never argue with an idiot, because they'll take you down and beat you at their level.
Exactly. So this is it. Now, what do we... So the next argument is, and the other silly ones I've seen, is obviously Inoue stepping up to fight Tank. That was what everybody wanted, which is utter nonsense. But I do want to discuss, where does Inoue go from here? Now, we both agree, I think, that the undisputed fight is the obvious fight to make.
Yeah.
Where does Inoue go? Say Inoue beats Tapales in November, December. Who does he fight in spring of 2024?
That's the $1 million question. And I mean, I think, is it our friend Robese Ramirez?
Robese Ramirez, yes.
Was definitely kind of putting his hand up.
Well, there was a reason Ramirez was on the undercard.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, it's not an accident that he's on the undercard. So we were discussing this. I think I put this on Twitter as well. The way I think this goes, Inoue fights Tapales.
Yeah,
Ramirez has had it. Lopez is fighting Gonzalez on the 14th of September. Am I right?
I don't know offhand, but I'll go with you, because you're better at that than I.
Sometime mid-September. Say Lopez beats Gonzalez. I think top rank go Ramirez fights Lopez. Then I think Inoue fights Tapales, and then the winner fights next year for the best featherweight in the world.
Featherweight, yeah.
And I think that's the one that they'll make. Because what I will say, I think there's lots of really, really good fighters at super bantamweight. I think there's one other elite fighter. I'm not going to say special in the Inoue special, but I think Ramirez is better than everybody else in and around those weight classes.
Absolutely.
He looked great on the undercard as well, but the guy he was fighting shouldn't be in the ring with him.
Yeah, no, it was a poor match.
But it was really one-sided, and it was a bit uncomfortable to watch at the end.
You speaking of uncomfortable, did you see, and obviously related to Inoue as well, Donaire's fight on Saturday?
I did. So I haven't brought myself to watch it. So I
love
Donaire.
I love Donaire too, and Donaire, the man, in my opinion, should retire. Because maybe he's getting great money for this. Maybe he needs the money. I don't know the guy's financial situation. However, Saturday night was a young guy giving him a beating and him taking that beating that he didn't need and he didn't deserve.
No, it was. Sorry.
He lasted, the full 12 rounds, and it was for another world title. And Donaire is very fond of those world titles, but at this point where you really couldn't, it was so one-sided, like there was no even kind of debate at the end who'd won, because everybody just said, unfortunately Donaire hadn't. But I'd prefer now, obviously, if he wants to fight on, that's on him, but I prefer for his own legacy if he kind of didn't. But again, it's his own thing. And unlike Spence, and people were saying, why are people calling on Spence to retire? But there's different reasons I do that. For Donaire, it's number one, his legacy, number two, his age, and number three, it's not fair to him to get beaten by lesser fighters just because he's older now.
So that's where I kind of tend to draw. Like you can't tell people to retire. It's obviously a job. I do. You kind of say to fighters, right? You are now getting beaten against guys that you shouldn't. Donaire is what's happened. I think he did so well against Inoue, and then won a world title, had a defense, and now he's like, right, well, I only lost to Inoue. Like that, like anyone can do that. And by all accounts, Steve Kim, who is probably one of the best boxing journalists in the States, was basically saying it was one of those fights where Donaire looked like he could see exactly what was coming and couldn't get out of the way.
Exactly. It was a hard watch. I didn't like even watching it. I was like,
So I won't be watching that fight. And I love Donaire. I got to see him in Glasgow, which is just one of those moments, and like he just brilliant. He's such a fabulous fighter.
Oh yeah.
I've just sat and we sat. It was Christie's favorite fighter, and just sat and watched the highlights go back and watch Donaire at his best. He was just unbelievable.
Absolutely. And even in his first fight against Inoue, I still remember that Tuesday morning when I was sneaking Sky Plus or Sky Go in work, and I thought this would be over in a few minutes, but it wasn't.
No,
it was some performance by both Inoue and Donaire. Like how? Didn't he? Who suffered the orbital fracture? Was it Donaire?
Yeah, it was Inoue.
Oh, it was Inoue.
He broke Inoue's orbital bone.
Yeah, oh my God! But that won fight of the year, didn't it? So
it did. Yeah,
it was immense. It was brilliant, and it was just great. And like you said, perhaps that's what spurred on Donaire to fight more. But the second Inoue fight was far more conclusive and far more father time.
Yeah,
evidence of father time. And I think last Saturday, Sunday morning, was even more evidence that father time is there. So calling time would be what I'd suggest. But like we said before, that is on the boxer and his people.
Guys, very quickly. Enda.
Yes.
What did you predict in the Inoue Fulton fight?
I predicted Inoue by stoppage.
What did I predict in the Inoue Fulton fight?
I don't know. Inoue by stoppage.
Inoue by stoppage. I actually got it right. I got it 8-10.
Yeah.
So we're going to have another guest join us. Luke, what did you predict in the Inoue Fulton fight?
I predicted Fulton by decision.
How you doing, my man? That was a really ratty
thing. That was a low blow now, Adam. That was a low blow.
To do.
Hey.
So,
I'm giving Luke up to 5 minutes to recover now from that.
Yeah. Hey,
What did you think of Inoue, Fulton?
I thought that the stoppage for Inoue was the most likely outcome. I thought in my own head that Fulton had what it took to win the fight. But he didn't start like he was going to win it, and he didn't ever look like he thought he was going to win it. It just seemed like a formality. And Inoue's jab to the body was a thing of beauty. He was so sharp, so fast. Like, he looked faster than he looked at bantamweight. Now that could be because the bantamweight guys were a bit quicker than Fulton, but Fulton's not a slow guy. But he didn't use any of his advantages on Tuesday last week. He didn't use his long levers. He didn't use his legs. He didn't use his inside defense. Didn't use anything. He did the opposite to what I thought he would do, what I said he would do, what I would do if I was him on the last video. He didn't do any of that. Even in round 7, which is the round people give him because he did a bit better than the rest of the rounds, like, he visibly hurt Inoue, and he just didn't take any capitalizing of it at all. Like, the first thing that happened was he hit him with that right hook, hurt Inoue. Inoue covered up. He took 3 steps back. So Inoue thought, okay, I'm going to go forward now and hit you. And he did.
So, I've got a couple of points in that. Particularly, we'll go with the right hand.
But can I just interject for one thing? Just what you said there about Fulton, kind of how he came in against Inoue versus what you would expect it. Is that a lot like Smith for Canelo?
I would say similarly, yeah.
People expected a bit more than what they got. Even the people
that's a really good example. Because if you're 6'3", right, and you're coming into the ring probably nearly 14 stone as a super middleweight, right, and you're told there's a fella, he used to be a junior middleweight, he's 5'8", and he's not very quick on his feet, you would lap that up all day long, wouldn't you?
Big up to 5'8" crew.
You're one. Look, that's the thing, and that you're ginger. Canelo's ginger. You're 5'8".
I am not ginger.
But
right. It's so this is something that I take issue with quite a lot with a lot of pundits. It's the very much, if my aunt had balls, she would be my uncle, because if we talk about Smith,
are you assuming your aunt's gender?
Yes, apparently I am. Show me one fight where Callum Smith is stuck and moved behind a jab. It doesn't exist because he can't do it. And this is the point I make with everybody. Like, they should just do this. They can't do it because they'd have done it already. It's the same in the Fulton fight. So to me, there is two different. So I would slightly disagree with that, because in my opinion, Callum Smith against Canelo, I think Callum froze. In my opinion, I think Fulton got in there and thought, I'm going to be bigger, I'm going to be slicker, and I'm going to be the better boxer and be able to box him, not necessarily on the outside, because Fulton doesn't do that. Fulton doesn't step around. Even when he's a mid-range fighter and he's a tough fighter, Inoue's a better boxer. All of the compu boxers now, I don't like compu boxers for like really acute things, but you look at a trend. Inoue's the better boxer by a million miles. Inoue is faster. Inoue throws the better combinations, which means, we discussed this last time, all of Fulton's traits play against Inoue, because he's not a fast combination puncher. He punches in 1s and 2s, and that's how you get countered, right? He's not a slick guy. We were talking about his defense on the inside. If you're fighting somebody against Inoue, you can't let him touch you. But he's never been that guy to go around the ring. He's not a Shakur. He's not a Haney. He's not that slickster. He gets hit too much for that to happen. And I think what happened is, he got in there, and after 2 rounds, he realized, shit, I haven't got anything to keep this guy away. But if you then look at the right hand he lands in the 7th, he comes right over with it. His feet are gone. The reason he takes 3 steps back after that, he's in with his feet underneath him.
He was off balance, yeah.
He's off balance. So it's not one of those ones, why didn't you follow up? He didn't follow up because if he'd thrown another punch, he just wasn't in the position to do so. That's why it's so, the fundamentals matter so much. And Luke and I are going to bore you to tears in about 5 minutes when we get on to Crawford about fundamentals. Inoue's fundamentals are brilliant. And they were talking online about how people were saying Inoue's, a better fighter than Pacquiao, or a greater fighter than Pacquiao. And that's nonsense when you actually sit and think about what Pacquiao achieved. But Inoue at 122 pounds beats the Pacquiao at 122 pounds. That is a very different thing because Inoue is one of the most fundamentally phenomenal fighters in the sport. That's what I think.
100%. Like I was saying last week about Fulton's chances with Inoue and why I thought, what I would do if I was Fulton. He came into that ring from the first bell and gave Inoue so much respect. Like, for me, if you're a fighter, and especially a world champion defending your belts, if you're coming in against someone who's this power puncher, my attitude would be, you have to show me. I'm not going to start round one thinking you're the puncher that you are. You're going to have to show me. Whereas Fulton didn't have to be shown. He went in tentative. Like, he was, you could tell everything Inoue threw, he was ready to be hurt. Like, he was anticipating the pain before it even came, it seemed. And like that jab to the body from Inoue, like the jab to the body is my favorite punch in boxing. My favorite punch.
Yeah.
And like he has it to perfection. He has his head where he can't be countered. He stabs it in. It's not like a push and blow. He stabs it. You'd swear he had like Wolverine claws at the end of his fists. The way he's stabbing that in. And it's a thing of beauty. And like one thing that my dad has always drilled into me when doing pad work or sparring or anything, he always says, measure twice, cut once. And that's what Inoue did with that right hand that finished the fight, essentially. It was that right hand off the jab to the body that started it all. And he threw...
Sorry.
Yeah, go on, Enda.
No, I was going to say the stabbing jab is going to be something that will come on in the next fight as well.
Yes, and the reason why the jab should never be seen as anything but a weapon, because it is a weapon if you use it correctly. But that right hand he threw that unraveled Fulton in the 8th, that was the second time he threw that in the whole fight. And it was perfect.
Yeah, and the first one he gets at the wrong length. Yeah.
So that really came into my head when that happened. It was like measure twice, cut once. He knew where he had to go the next time, and bang, he got it. Similar to George Foreman talking about his right hand against Michael Moore.
Yeah.
Where he had to just.
My friend George Foreman.
Sorry.
Your friend George Foreman.
Oh yeah, you're a pal. Yeah, jeez. Yeah. When's the barbecue?
I don't know, but I'm just getting rid of my air fryer and I'm going to buy a George Foreman grill. We're going to eat like it's the 90s.
Yeah, look, the thing is with Inoue as well, he has that, he's not cocky, but in the ring, he feels untouchable. And you can just tell that. Like, he doesn't give a damn what's coming towards him. He knows he can hurt you, and that's enough for him.
But you surely need that as a boxer.
He's better than everybody else, and he knows it at that point.
You know, you need to have that self-belief in the ring, because if you don't have it, you're beaten. And
I don't think Fulton had it on the night.
But that's what I was kind of getting on with you with the comparison with Smith, as in they believed they were beaten before they entered the ring. That was what
I genuinely think so. I heard Angel Garcia a lot in the corner for Fulton. I didn't think he was the head trainer, but it surely seemed like he was taking over things. But again, I don't know how I rate Angel as a trainer. Because every time Fulton would throw something, whether it missed or not, all I heard was, "What did I tell you? What did I tell you?" Coming in through the ropes. So I don't know what the camp was like for Fulton or whatever, but look, he was just ill-prepared for Inoue, and he fought the wrong fight. I don't know if there was a right fight to fight. I don't think
that's the thing. I don't think he has that in him to beat him. Personally,
I was just speaking from what I would do if I was in Fulton's shoes. But yeah, look, Inoue is one of the best fighters on the planet. Not the very best, but he's well up there.
Well, he was for 4 days.
For 4 days.
For 4 days.
The best fighter in the world.
Look, lads, I'm going to have to digress. I didn't ever agree with that, but look.
Really?
Okay. Bud has not budged from my number one spot for about 5 or 6 years.
He can't have been number one for that long.
But
even with the inactivity, I mean, it's like people that are even putting Fury in the top 5, but I think that was just to get reaction.
See, now,
inactivity costs me on a pound for pound.
Now, in fairness, right, I'll just say this before we move on.
Yeah.
The way I rank my pound for pound list is probably different to how you rank it.
Yeah, I know that you and I do it differently.
Yeah, like I go off.
I think you do it differently to everybody.
So pound for pound for me, right, is if you shrink everyone down or big them up to the same weight, everyone's the same size, same weight.
That's
who do I think is the best?
Mhm.
I think Bud Crawford would beat everybody if everyone was the same size. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that totally, and I think that's a very literal definition of it.
Yeah. But I mean, like, and I that's part of it. But then also, given their performances, that's what I
Yeah,
take.
no, I totally
And
understand
their
that.
activity in that. But I
that's
do
why,
agree with you on the first bit that a lot of people seem to miss. How who's the best puncher pound for pound, and everyone's going, well, it's Wilder. But how could it be Wilder if Inoue is punching the way he was punching down at the weight he was at? Like, they don't
I will say,
understand the pound for
I
pound.
will say for Wilder though, in Wilder's defense, he was 209 pounds knocking lads out 270. Like, that is impressive as well.
Well, yes, but still, it's relative to the weights as well.
Exactly.
Like it or not, he was a heavyweight. So that was it.
We'll say this is a fact. Inouye's a better puncher than Wilder.
Oh God, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he punches really hard and correctly. And
But he
that's a bad
punches with both
combination.
hands, and Wilder is a right hand. Like, it's one hand.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a hand.
Oh well, yeah, Jesus.
It's a hell of a shot, but it's one shot.
But yeah, that's how I do my pound for pound. So that's why I've had Bud up the top for so long, because I believe if everyone was the same size, he'd beat them all. That's the way.
So my pound for pound works a little less literally, and it is who do I think is the best, and that doesn't or the greatest is probably the better way of putting that, because we talk about this a lot. It's not all of that. It's what the most important thing for me in the pound for pound list is who you've beaten and what you've won.
Yeah.
Then it's the weight classes, then it's the eye test, and it's those four things all kind of amalgamate together. And I put less emphasis on the eye test and I know that Luke definitely puts it. And this is why it's interesting, because neither's wrong. And the ultimate
but that's the whole point of pound for pound. It's so subjective. It's like who's the best footballer? It's all subjective. It's all it's all barroom talk, because nothing can be proven. You can't say this person is the best QED because it's irrelevant.
As Adam put it before on another video, and it's probably the best way to put it, so long as you can back your logic, then it's fine.
I don't think anyone would disagree. Well, right now everyone's got the same pound for pound number one, but a month ago, if we had a different person, the person we had, I don't think anyone would disagree with their position there.
A month ago, we all had different pound for pound number ones.
Exactly.
Mine, I had Bud, you had
Usyk, and you had Inoue.
And I had Inoue, yeah. So we did, but we all agreed they were 1, 2, and 3, whatever way you tossed it.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is it. So it's not about necessarily the exact position. It's if you've got the right people in roughly the right places.
Yeah.
And that's for me, like my pound for pound list would probably get silly after 4, because I'd have like Shakur Stevenson up there. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
Now, on your guys' criteria, Shakur's not up there. But if
not
you're looking
4,
at,
no.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But if you're looking at
he wouldn't be 4. I think he's about 6 on mine, but
which is fair.
And I'm
just saying, like, off the eye test,
Shakur needs to fight.
Yeah, exactly. Because we all agree. Again, it's that debate. We all agree that I think we all agree that Shakur is probably one of the 5 best fighters.
Oh yeah,
but he hasn't done it yet. So that's where we'll disagree on that one. But let's move on to the man that did do it. So ultimately, we were talking about how we do this in different ways, but we've actually arrived at the same conclusion, which is that a man called Terence Bud Crawford from Omaha, Nebraska, is the undisputed welterweight champion of the world and the best fighter on planet Earth today. What do we think, boys?
And there's no kind of dispute on that. No. I don't think anyone is even challenging it right now.
It's not often you blow away. It's not often you manage to blow away everybody. That was unbelievable.
But when you take a guy like Spence and do what he did to him,
so we're going to go.
It really puts you on a whole different stratosphere.
We're going to go Luke first, then we're going to go Enda, and then we'll go for me on thoughts on this.
Look, on Saturday night itself, there's not enough fucking superlatives for that. It was just amazing. Like, it was literally, like we said the other week, that people are a joy to watch. But that was for everybody. That was, if that was your first time watching a fight, you're looking at that thinking, who is that guy? That guy's amazing. And then when you're people like us who are nerds to the sport and adore it, you're saying the same thing. Your jaw's on the floor. You're like, what is going on here? And like, I'm going to start off by being really, really, really kind to Spence. I don't think there's more than maybe 5 or 6 people between 147 pounds and 160 pounds who convincingly beat him. I think that's fair to say.
I think that's fair. I don't think
there's more. You know, it's not 5 or 6. It's even smaller number for me.
That's what I'm saying. You'd really have to clutch at straws to get a handful, right?
Yep, totally agree.
Bud
100%.
beat the shit out of him. Like Bud literally, like Bud said to him at the press conference, "I beat you like one of my children misbehaving." Like, and Jesus Christ, it was worse than that. Like, you know,
it was.
Like it was a pace thing. And look, I gave Bud round 1. I know you guys gave Spence round 1.
Yep.
Of activity, but Spence didn't really land. It was all gloves that he was hitting, and that was one thing that really impressed me with Bud, because if I would have had a gripe about Bud, was he does get hit.
Yep.
But on Saturday night, his defense was on point from round 1.
Yeah.
He took 3 significant punches in that fight, and none of them phased him. He took 1 at the start of the second. It was start of the third. Spence came out, double jab, and then a left hook over the top.
Yep.
And caught Crawford. Then he caught him for the first knockdown in the 7th when Bud was throwing his hook. They matched hooks, basically. And then he landed another one to the body later in that round when he was trying to survive off the ropes. And it was a decent enough shot, to be fair. That was it. Like, nothing fazed Bud at all. And I was just thinking to myself, like, what is he capable of? You know, because this was a very good fighter in Spence. Many people had him in their pound-for-pound top 10. You know, I didn't personally, but many people did. And you're thinking to yourself, this guy would be the most... Sorry?
It was always too high.
It was. I think us three, we always felt Spence was a little bit over, but still, he beat the guys. His resume is, fair. Was excellent up until it was kind of torn to shreds on Saturday.
Like, personally, I thought Porter won the fight against Spence. I thought the knockdown saved Spence, personally. But it was a tight fight. You know, there's no robberies in a tight fight. And I suppose when Crawford's coming into this, he's thinking he's in PBC. You know, he's in Vegas. It was kind of a pro Spence crowd, really, if we're honest.
So apparently, it was Crawford.
Really?
Apparently in person. So again, this is just purely going off. I think it was Twitter. I think it was Tebbit was saying that actually the crowd was more Crawford. Everything was Spence, but the crowd was Crawford.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
But actually that,
because you'd imagine like Texas isn't that far from Vegas.
But then again, neither is Colorado, and that's where Bud trained. But yeah, that brings me to what I was just about to say, actually, speaking of crowds. As soon as Lose Yourself came on the radio there, and you seen Eminem, and he's, let me introduce the next motherfucking undisputed welterweight champion. And you're hearing those words, and you're like, yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, I was actually the same, and I'm not going to lie. I even tweeted at the time. I said, well, that's 1-0.
How could you lose? You know, and like he just went in, and he was so calm. Never ever rushed his work. And I know we spoke about it briefly on Twitter, Adam, about him not playing with his food. But he didn't not play with his food, but he also didn't rush his work. Which was lovely to see. And that's a cerebral, like, that's really smart. You know what I mean? Because against Spence, you have to give him his credit.
We're talking about food. It's steak. He tenderized steak. That's what he did.
That's exactly what he did. Now, look, I think, to be honest, Spence was probably ready to go from round 5. Really?
I'm glad he waited.
Financially.
Everywhere, yeah.
But, and we'll give Spence credit as well. Jesus, he's a dog.
Yeah.
He's a dog. There was no he would have died in that ring on Saturday night if he had to. There was no quitting him.
Nope.
Do you know? And I believe, I think personally Spence should move up to 160. I think he should skip 154. If I was him, I'd go straight up to 160.
There's no one there. That's the thing.
Exactly.
This is the interesting bit now. As you go, there's nobody there. 154 and 160 is a void.
Yeah. And
I would say
the reason I would avoid 54 for him is because Bud's going up.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, Bud's going to be 154, so, which is very, very unfortunate on
everybody else.
But anyway.
But yeah, I think, you know, I've said it for years now. I'm not trying to be like, oh yeah, I'm great. I've said it for years. Bud has been my favorite fighter for the last 7 or 8 years, right? He proved to the world what I've been believing the last 7 or 8 years, that he is the best. And like, even when I was, like, to name drop, when I was talking to Bomac and Red that time in Manchester, and I asked them about the Spence fight, they weren't one bit concerned. They were like, he got him. It don't matter. And you knew they meant it. And you could see in this fight how they've done their homework. And that brings me on to the jab that Enda was mentioning earlier. Nobody has tried to jab with Errol Spence like that. And Bud just stuck that jab in his face, through his face, really. And because he was a right-hander and he was southpaw, that jab is just multiplied. And the damage that was on Spence's face by the end of round 2 itself was just shocking. He looked like he'd been in a war already. And he'd only been hit with, maybe 8 or 9 good shots.
Yeah, like, it was 8 or 9 flush shots. Don't tell me a jab's not a power punch.
Exactly.
Well, in fairness, Crawford switched southpaw, so his jab was his power punch.
Exactly. That's what I was saying, yeah.
Did you hear because again, I don't know what everyone's commentary situation was. They were saying that Crawford's been southpaw 70% of his last fights.
That was on Showtime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for the totality of the fight. On this one, it was.
Yes, for the totality of the fight. But across his last 5 or 6 fights, he has been southpaw 70% of the time.
Yeah.
Mad.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, he does switch, so I could believe that.
But
anyway, I don't mean to interrupt.
I'm going to finish with a question.
You finish with a question.
Is Bud Crawford now the best switch hitter of all time? Is he leapfrogging Hagler? Yeah.
Because Hagler lost the Leonard fight because he switched.
I think Bud is now the number 1 switch hitter there's ever been.
Well, like that, I mean...
Far away, Enda. Time's yours.
It's a very leading question to fucking end with. I mean, because you're really leaving it out there.
You're qualifying. You might disagree.
No, but now you're putting it on us to start by either defending or contradicting that. And I'm just going to review the fight as I saw it. And I'll come along to that at the end. But first of all, I mean, we talked about people making predictions, and I was very happy with my prediction on that. But my good friend George Foreman, when I asked him who he was going, said sometimes you pick or make a prediction. Sometimes we're more worried about the pick and prediction than actually enjoying the match. This time it's popcorn and just enjoying 2 great fighters in the ring. Now, that coming from George Foreman, that last time, 2 great fighters in the ring. That's what we were all looking forward to. And what we got was a great fighter and an all-time great fighter in the ring. Because Spence, okay, he lost and he lost heavily. Like, that's a fact. And when I watched it back, I was less generous to Spence than on naked viewing in the middle of the night live. I'd given Spence a bit more than I on reflection, you know, like people were saying they were landing on gloves. But in round 1, it was because there was so little to score. His activity, his dominance scored it for him, you know, and he did try to do that. But we all know Crawford is a very limited fighter. When he throws a punch, it means something, you know. He doesn't just throw out. He's not a volume puncher whatsoever. He is a clinical pinpoint assassin, and that is exactly what he did on Saturday night. He assassinated Errol Spence Jr., and it was an absolute massacre. Spence came the first round. I thought Spence did very well. He was taking the ring. He was in control. Bud was obviously just soaking it all up, downloading, if you want to use Lomachenko kind of example. But either way, Spence did do well in round 1. But after that, Crawford just, each round progressed, with the exception of round 7, which is funny because apart from the knockdown, that was one of Spence's better rounds. Bud was always just getting more and more lethal. You know, this fisherman was catching his fish, and it was just an absolute, watching a genius at work, really. You know, watching an absolute master craftsman at his trade. And like that, he switched to southpaw as an orthodox fighter, meaning his big punch was the leading jab, and that punch was exquisite, phenomenal, and destructive. And you know, Bud was just, he was in control right from the moment we all heard "Lose Yourself" by Eminem. That's when we felt this. Bud has this. Bud is the man in control, and he brought his fishnet with him, and everything just pointed to Bud Crawford at that point. You know, it's funny because Spence had been the odd favorite earlier, and everything all of a sudden just flipped to Crawford. But the fight was unbelievably one-sided, and it's not a shame on Crawford, because Crawford still has all those other fights that people need to see. Yeah. Sorry, Spence. I'm doing what I was earlier. All Spence's other fights still stand to him, but this one was where he was found out that he's not as good as Terence Bud Crawford. So he's great, but he's not an all-time great. And Terence Crawford, after that performance, certainly is. Now, you're saying, was he the best switch hitter ever? That's something I could give him, because if he's in the all-time great category now, so there has to be one category, you know, that he's going to win that one or that one, and that's a perfectly legitimate call to make, saying he's the best switch hitter. I wouldn't disagree with you. So on that, for me, it just cements his legacy as an all-time great fighter on Saturday night.
Can I just say one thing?
Lots of money, because I told everyone between round 9 and 11.
Can I just say one thing about even the rounds that people gave to Spence, and just how I felt about it, right?
Yes.
Well, Spence did what he could, and Crawford did what he wanted.
Yeah.
That is how it looked to me.
And perhaps it's a kind of one of those, a bit like when we were watching Inoue, was because he was doing so well that it was almost, you were giving around to Spence.
Well, personally, I didn't give anything to Spence. Genuinely.
But I don't think that's a particularly difficult thing. As far as I'm concerned, there was only one round you really could. And it was just...
round 3 was also a round that you could consider giving to Spence.
Yeah.
He started it really well, but then Bud pushed him back.
But
if
like
you want to give it to Spence, you can make a case, but you should
exactly. That's what I mean. But there's so many that just you couldn't, and it was immaterial anyway, because he was absolutely destroyed in the end. And
is that our favorite thing? Is that our favorite thing about Crawford as well? He's not leaving it to judges the last 5 years.
Well, we've been talking. We were talking.
We can't leave it to judges because he was never a judge's favorite. You know what I mean? Like he's a boxer without a promoter at the moment, you know, so he's never going to get a decision. Well, he is now, but just on that as well, and on the ending of the fight, I really felt Spence's corner should have taken it out of Spence's hands, and it should have ended.
Not often I agree with that, but I 100% agree with that.
You know, I thought they were putting a lot on the referee there, and the corner really should have intervened before that.
It should have finished at the end of the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the corner should never be braver than the fighter at the end of the day.
Exactly. It's not fair on the fighter. You know, it's not fair on the fighter. And I often said,
you know what this is actually? This is the second time that I can remember in probably the last 10 years where I've been begging for a towel, and the last time was Fury Wilder 2.
Yeah,
I was begging for a towel in that fight.
There's definitely a few others that come to mind.
Steve Gray would have thrown it
out. Yeah, but it's very, like I say, very seldom I would ever want a towel to come in a world title fight. There's so much on the line.
And just coming from the whole kind of stopping a referee coming in early, And it was funny because people said, oh, the referee was kind of right, wasn't he? We were like, well, yeah, but it could have been over before that.
Look, it could have been over from round 5 on, in my opinion.
Right.
Well, round 5 would have been a bit early for the corner to stop it. Round 7, probably.
So, this is how I thought the fight went. We said this last time. There's a reason that this fight didn't happen till today. Spence's team didn't want this fight in 2018. They didn't want this fight in 2019, and they made the biggest mistake because that is the best chance they had at beating Crawford. Crawford has got better and better as a welterweight. Every single fight, he's knocked everybody out. Spence was brilliant from 2017 to 2019. Then the car crash happened, the COVID happened, the rent happened.
As we pointed out in the preview.
He has not fought in 16 months going into this fight. And it showed. Crawford has fought Avanesian. Yeah, it was 6 months ago. This is what I was talking about earlier. If you look at Spence's punches, the zip falls away as they got closer to the target. Crawford was so good. I cannot express how good his hand positioning was because one hand here and he never let it go. One hand here or one hand here. Because the way that Spence stands is so wide, when he lunges in, it meant that he did all the work for Crawford. So he throws that jab, and the jab, all the steam comes out of the jab as it comes out, but it never came back because it was always there. And then as the other hand would come over, he'd pull the jab back, but it never snapped back, which meant Crawford would just come over every single time. So what did Crawford do? That slowly took away the Spence jab. That's where everything comes off Spence. So he's going, shit, what do I do from there? Now, then what's happening? The body work. It's so tight. If you watch the fight, as the fight goes through, Spence slowly but surely, the pace starts to come off those shots. They're all one-dimensional, and by the time they actually get to hitting the target, there's no zip on it. It's all coming from the arm. There's nothing from the leg and nothing from the hand. In contrast to that, Crawford is here. He's parrying the jab there. His hand is going maybe 8 inches, and Spence's face is meeting it halfway, which is why Spence's face looked the way it did. It was because he was adding all the volume onto how brilliant Crawford is. Crawford's feet were shoulder width apart the whole fight. He never had to move.
Can I just say one thing you reminded me of? Sorry, Adam.
Yeah.
What I said in the chat the other day about the way Floyd Mayweather described Golovkin is how I would describe Errol Spence, which is straight up and down with no special effects. And he showed that on Saturday. He didn't have anything to his arsenal. Once the school book had been ripped up, he didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I know we don't agree on this because I think Golovkin had plenty of special effects, but I would agree on this.
But no, I'm not.
Yeah, but I know the point you mean.
Yeah. But I don't like. That's how I saw Spence.
Yeah.
That's how.
But I think that's a little bit too hard on Spence as well because Spence has showed plenty special effects prior.
So this is the thing.
He didn't know what to do.
No, right. But prior to this,
here's the difference, right? We're arguing over this because there's levels to boxing. Okay. This is the last level. I don't know who the last guy is, but we'll call it Wario.
The final boss, yeah.
This is the final boss. And this is what happens is you get to a point where Spence is bigger, he's better, he's fundamentally sound, he's stronger, and he can go through the gears. And Thurman didn't have, I don't know if you thought Thurman, but Thurman, Porter, Garcia, Brook, they can't live with him. But you get to this fight, this is all-time great. This is what I'm going to come on to. This is all-time great level. This is not because we were talking about hate the word exposed. He just found his level.
Exactly.
And that's not an exposed thing. Spence is a great welterweight.
He's the second best welterweight in the world.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous statement to make. The problem is the gap between 1 and 2 is huge, right? And this was it. It was how brilliant, and this is how much I love Crawford. He was able to come right over the southpaw jab with the left hand. He could do it as if it was his lead hand, and it was the timing of the jab. He took everything away from Errol because by the time that fight finished, Spence was coming around the outside of the ring. When do you ever see him do that? Because he couldn't throw, and we were talking about this with Inoue. Crawford had used every single thing that Spence did well against him to the point where he didn't know what to do. He was like, Well, I can't do that. Right, hold on. I can't do that because he's going to hit me with this. I can't do this because he's going to hit me with this. I can't step in because his feet. He didn't have to move at all. It was 6 inches here and there, and it's such. Tony was brilliant at this in that James Toney was able to move very economically while getting you to do all the work. If he was a footballer, we'd say that he makes the ball do the work. The fact that he could parry a jab and come over, the fact that he would, like you said, he could stab down to the stomach. It was that right. Here's what we're now talking about. This is what Crawford achieved on Saturday. Crawford now gets to be in this discussion. Do you think Crawford would have beaten Ray Leonard? Do you think Crawford would have beaten Tommy Hearns? And do you think Crawford would have beaten Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather? Now, I don't care what your answers are because that is now a discussion. And before that, it wasn't a discussion. That's what Crawford did at the weekend. And it was absolutely brilliant. But Spence did not give himself the best possible chance. But it's done. The handlers didn't want it those years ago. He left it too long. He was probably tight at the weight. But 154, that doesn't make a difference. And in God's name, taking the fight there at the weekend will have done him no favors in terms of health anyway. Anyway, that was a rather long tirade on my end. Oh, one final thing. I can't remember if it was Luke Arenda stated about how good and accurate he was. Here are the punch stats. Crawford landed 60% of his power punches, which is ridiculous. 20% of his total punches and 42% of his jabs. Those numbers are stupid. Those are ridiculous numbers. And we were talking about, like, obviously Crawford and Floyd and things like that. I love Crawford because he goes in for the kill, because he's a monster. And I prefer that to the Floyd's way of doing it. Haney, like a Haney or maybe a Stevenson, who are a bit less aggressive. That's what I love, and that is my
Floyd had his aggressiveness as well. It just later
not
on.
A welterweight.
Yeah, pretty boy.
Not a welterweight.
Not at welterweight. No,
Floyd, I think Floyd is, as we just literally discussed today, Adam. Floyd's not a big guy. He's tiny. Stood next to Crawford.
He's a tiny little thing.
Yeah.
Like you say, he doesn't look much bigger than Shakur Stevenson does now.
Yeah.
You know. So I think with Floyd, like if you compared Pretty Boy to Bud right now, I think that's more of a fair comparison.
So
but
here's my little stance on this. I like Bud better at welterweight, Floyd at lightweight.
Okay, yeah.
That's the distinction I'll make.
Is that a get out clause?
No, because I think those are two different fights. Like, because if you ask me who does, sorry,
who's the better fighter overall?
I like Bud. Bud has power, and that's where I'll go.
Okay.
Who's the better? Who's achieved more, and who's greater is Floyd, and it's not close.
I think I'll say this now, and I don't want to turn this into a Floyd Mayweather fanboy thing. I think Floyd hit much harder than he was given credit for, even at welterweight.
Yes.
Like when he cracked people at welterweight, no one rushed in on Floyd at welterweight.
No, but we said that.
Apart from Maidana.
Yeah.
And when Maidana got hit, even he slowed down. Do you know, like Floyd could punch. Obviously he was a KO artist at 130. Yeah. And I think if we're going to compare Mayweather to Bud, I think Mayweather's greatest 130 performance should be, against Corrales.
Yeah.
Is similar to what we saw on Saturday.
That Floyd is the best fighter I've seen since Roy.
Yeah.
That Floyd. But you're asking me about, but I don't think
the best
Floyd
we've seen
was
since that Floyd.
Yeah. But and that's exactly it. But I don't think that.
But the point of it is, you don't go past Floyd to go back to Leonard. You stop at Floyd. He's the best since Floyd. He's not the best since Leonard.
No.
Yeah.
But who is saying that?
No, but I'm just saying that would mean that Floyd.
The book stops with Floyd, and then it starts with Bud here now.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, but
now we're into all-time great discussions because we are trying to, But I would say, and maybe this is, not going to say, we're now in the Bud era, and
but how lucky are we?
Certainly the Mayweather era, whatever moniker you want to put on it, Pretty Boy or Money. Pretty Boy was obviously when he was Pretty Boy, he was just a much better package than Money turned out to be something a bit different. But for me, is it because I lived kind of through the Mayweather era kind of in my adulthood that I would say, yeah. And my early adulthood is what I think everybody kind of attaches their best boxer to. Is that why I am kind of,
Maybe.
you know?
I don't think it's unfair to say how great Bud is, and
Oh,
say
no. Like,
I think
we said it all night.
How blessed are we that within 10 years of Mayweather retiring,
the point.
We've gotten Bud.
Right, here's the point. When Mayweather and Pacquiao retired, we were all saying, I was like, well, that's it, because none of them are going to do this.
Yeah.
Right? And look, like, what Bud has done is he's now in that discussion. Now, here's what I want to see next. I've got no interest in the Spence rematch. Okay, and if anybody says to me, "But Fury Wilder 3 was great," right, that is a fucking brilliant fight. But it does my head in that it's now an argument for dog shit rematches. It does my head.
What about Fury Chisora? That
But anyway, right?
As someone said at the weekend, and I 100% agree. I don't want no shit Kambosos rematch.
Yeah. Oh God, you see Tom Gray get a load of grief. Anyway,
I think we can agree as well. It doesn't matter what weight this fight is.
No, it's got no difference. Weight wasn't the problem there. But here are the two fights I would like to see, because everyone's saying we should now get Jamel. Jamel's fighting Canelo, and he's never coming back to the weight, so it's irrelevant. Yeah. I want to see him fight Boots, or I want to see him fight Zoo. Those are the two fights I want to see.
Do you know why I don't want to see that?
Because you like Boots.
Yeah.
Not because I like him. I like Crawford, I like Boots, and I like Zoo. But I just think it's a bit unfair to Boots.
But this is how you become right. This is it.
Yeah,
I understand what you're saying, but hear me out, right? We have wanted for years for there to be one champion at a weight, right? And now we have one champion, which means someone's got to fight him. Boots Ennis is the mandatory challenger to Terence Crawford. So he's got no fucking business being in that position if he's not going to take the fight. And we can't then go, well, we don't want Boots to do it because we quite like Boots and we think he's going to be really good in a few years.
No, it's not.
This is the fight.
It's not because we like him. It's just I think it's a bit too soon for Boots.
But he's mandatory.
But it's the same for everybody else. It's the same for Stanionis. He's not going to be ready.
The way I like to describe this is, you're not good enough until you are.
Yeah, you won't know.
But for me, why I pick the guy who's fighting, Canelo, Jamel, would be because he's far more experienced than Boots. So he has that experience.
But that's the better fight.
World, that fight gets cancelled and Jamel fights Bud.
Yeah. But that's the point, right? My point is that's the fight to make. That is the one we want. That'd be the best fight. But it's not happening. In the interim,
then Sue could fight Boots, and the winner could fight the winner of that, and then I'd be.
But let's say, right, you know, this is like an example. It's a weird example, but it's one I'm going to use because I remember the phrase since being a kid. When Rooney came on the scene, right, at 16 years old.
Don't talk to me about a little fucker.
I remember a quote from the newspaper when I was a kid and just stuck with me, and it was, "If he's good enough, he's old enough."
Yeah,
that's a trite phrase in my opinion.
But that's what this is with Ennis, right? If he's good enough, he'll be good enough. If he's not, he won't.
Ennis is 26 years old.
I know, but
that's the fight.
You're putting him in against one of the all-time greats.
But
he's either going to be an all-time great himself, or he's going to lose.
No, but can he not be like Spence and just be great of his time? You know,
if Bud leaves the division, then yeah.
But this is the point. Like this is right. We can't have our cake and eat it too. We can't go, let's give Boots his own thing. This is it. He's the mandatory challenger, and this is how you make great fighters. We were saying the same with Lopez. Lopez has beaten Lomachenko when we didn't give him a chance in hell. I didn't give him a chance to beat
I picked him. I'm going to put it out there.
Yeah. Right? He beat Taylor. This is how you become great, is you go, right, I'm taking that opportunity. And with Boots is brilliant. And Crawford is going to be 35. Like, at some point, age, like we were saying this earlier, age and size beats Inoue and Crawford. That's how it goes. But that's going to happen at some point.
Look at Roy Jones when he fought Bernard Hopkins. Like, he went from fighting bums, really, to jumping up and fighting the best in the world. and he won.
And again, we want them to fight. I don't care about Boots fighting Thurman. There's two fighters I would be interested in seeing Boots fight. It's Errol Spence and it's Terence Crawford. It ain't going to be Spence, but it should be Crawford. And we do this a lot of the time.
He's IBF mandatory, isn't he?
So he's actually IBF interim. So what's going to happen is he's going to end up IBF champion.
because
of the vacate. But that's the fight to make. But we do this all the time, and it bugs the living daylights. So maybe we're like, oh, well, wait. So here's very left field example, because we're going to have to wrap this up soon.
Yep.
It drives me absolutely insane that they are marketing Buatsi versus Dan Aziz as a WBA final eliminator when both of them have turned down fights against Bivol. That drives me absolutely mad. Neither of them should be in the rankings if they've turned down a title shot, in my opinion. But if Boots is a welterweight mandatory challenger, he's ready.
That's proof that he's good enough to fight for the title.
Of course it is.
Whether he's good enough to win the title, that's a totally different ballgame.
And if you've got Boots up to the point of being mandatory challenger without giving him a fight that made him ready to fight for a world title,
that's your fault.
That's the manager's fault. Like boxing's, we're not here to give people these things, and that's
but for me, it's just acknowledging how great Crawford is.
Mm-hmm.
And on the contrary, for Bud, right? When you look at his come up at 135 pounds, he fought a murderer's row to get to Burns.
Yeah, I mean that one, and it was it's got to happen at some stage. But that's just my opinion on that front.
What are you in it for? If you're not fighting Crawford when you get the chance, what are you in it for?
Yeah, because this is it. This is because now your shot is you got the best fight in the world in front of you. You beat him, you get to say you're the best. And
you do like UK fighters and just kind of fight domestically for world titles.
No, that drives me absolutely insane as well.
It absolutely wrecks my head too.
No, that drives me. So we can't have it across the world. And I criticised Spence for years because he didn't want it with Bud.
Well, everyone did. And in fairness to Boots, he has said, yeah, I'll fight Crawford.
Yeah. So that's it. So make the fight. But I criticise Crawford, I criticise Garcia, I criticise Thurman, I criticise all of the PBC boys. And the credit goes to Spence for going, no, this is the one now. Right? He gets the credit for that. And he gets the credit. And like you said, it doesn't tarnish his legacy. The fact that he beat everybody else doesn't do anything at all. All that time goes is right. He goes here in the list, Bud goes here. That's all it does.
Yeah. And like the way I couldn't have put it.
Did anyone hear the pay-per-view numbers?
I don't know if they're out yet.
Like the way I put it for Spence at the start, when I started talking, was you wouldn't pick more than 5 lads to beat him between the 3 weight classes of welterweight and middleweight. That's how good he is.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's ridiculous what Crawford did.
Exactly. And it just puts a stamp on his greatness, and I'm so happy for him because he just seems like a great guy. And like he's not one of these brash people. He never gets into trouble outside the ring. He's a role model, and we've got a role model who happens to be the greatest fighter on the planet Earth.
Hasn't got into drunk driving issues. He hasn't gone to prison for hitting women.
Literally, yesterday.
I can think of one connection where Terence Crawford falls down, but I won't mention it.
So Monday, right? Yesterday. He was at a race that his daughter was running in. Do you know what I mean?
Did you see that YouTube of her where she her shoe fell off and she went back, put it on, and won the race? Oh my God!
His family are athletic freaks.
They really are.
Like that shows you what type of guy he is, though. Like he just became king of the world on Saturday, and on Monday he's in the crowd with the rest of the parents watching his daughter.
But I think that's probably the best way we can end this. So I'm going to have to end this because they're about to die as well. So thank you very much, boys. We will be back again at the end of August to basically review the fights through August. And
preview
September. But big up, Bud. Have a good night, guys.
Hey.
See you later.
Take care.